for 26. This is not just Europe versus Russia. Middle East, but over in Asia, you've got, Thailand, Cambodia, India versus Pakistan. You got Brazil, which may go into a revolution after what they're stupidly doing to Bolsonaro. Romania is trying to do the same thing against Kalin. I mean, it's the left is using this legal pretense to try and lock up anybody that opposes them. You saw France doing it to Marine Le Pen. You had Germany trying to outlaw the AfD.
Yep.
You can't, and then they want to stand up and pretend this is democracy. Yeah, right. Okay. They did it here in the United States going after Trump. When you cross that line and the rule of law no longer is the cornerstone of your civilization, everything else falls. Without the rule of law, nothing can survive. Nothing.
Hey, I'm glad you're joining us for what is the third in our series of conversations with the forecaster, Martin Armstrong, of course, internationally known. He was the one actually who produced artificial intelligence in modeling, and I'm talking over 45 years ago he was doing this. But it's a model that has projected and predicted things like the fall of the Berlin Wall well in advance, predicted the top in the Nikkei index, and so many other things, including, more recently, I'm interested in, he came on our show on Money Talks and at his World Economic Forum and talked specifically about the Russian coming invasion, not in just 214, which the model called, he also called the invasion that we're dealing with still to this day, and so many other geopolitical events. I can't do justice to us, but I can say, welcome back, Martin. Nice to have you.
Oh, it's always a pleasure, Mike. We've known each other for such a long time.
Yeah, and I look the worse for wear, and you don't. But let's start with. I'm going to break down some things. There's obviously. You were absolutely a pioneer in geopolitical, the factors that around the world that influences currency movement and capital flows, what happens to investment, all of those things. But I'm going to start with Europe because it's something that you've been writing about for a number of years, made your subscribers a lot of money by playing the euro to come down from over 150 on the US dollar. And of course, now we're flirting much lower than that. I want to just get your take on the EU and start with a blunt question. Your model has been calling for real financial problems in the EU that spread out to so many other areas. And no matter where you're listening, this will impact you. So give us the update on where you think the EU is at.
Well, I mean, as you know, when they were creating the euro, they came to me. And so I guess I ended up as the currency specialist in the world. I got called into just about everything. But so I sat down and said, look, this is how we create a currency. And they were, all the BS was always going to, compete with the dollar, all that stuff. And the problem was Helmut Kohl. And he knew he would lose the vote that the Germans would not agree to join. So he took Germany into the euro, basically unilaterally. He admitted before he died that he would, that if he allowed the German people to vote, he would have lost 7-3. So his condition was no consolidation of the debt. Now, I warned them, simply, I think any trader can see today, but I said, if you don't consolidate the debt, you'll never compete with the dollar. Because if I'm a hedge fund manager, I can pick up the phone and say, buy me $10 billion worth of U.S. treasuries. Europe, I still have to treat it like the currencies exist. Mm-hmm. Do I want Germany? Do I want Italy? Do I want France? Because it was never consolidated. Now, that goes to why the computer's been also undermining the whole ability of the EU to survive. Back in 2010, when we had the Greece crisis, and they had to ask the IMF for a bailout. All the traders immediately, they made a lot of money short in Greece, and they go, okay, who's next? Oh, Spain. And you get a contagion. Mainly because there was nothing ever consolidated. On top of that, even in Canada or United States or whatever, a bank has to have reserves, and the reserves are held in the federal debt. There is none in Europe. So let's say, right now we have, UK and France hinting that they may need an IMF bailout. France is the second largest EU economy. So we're not talking about Greece now. All right. What will happen? The traders will immediately do the same thing.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so you short the French bonds, etc. All right. But what else? All right. Then they're going to look at, which banks have the most French debt? And then you're going to see them attacking individual banks. Just as they were attacking, for example, Deutsche Bank a few years ago because of derivatives, etc. This is the way capital functions. And this is why Europe is doomed.
Well, I would
say it's never corrected it never set up properly.
Well, I think what you're bringing forward is so important. People don't seem to understand this concept of contagion, despite the fact they've lived through it. I mean, we all remember the subprime mortgage crisis. That was a U.S. problem that spread globally. You could sit here, whether you're in Canada or UK, so what's it got to do with us? But all of a sudden, so I think you're making such a key point for people to understand that, you get a problem in France, as you said, the IMF might knock on their door. They've been talking about the IMF with UK. We know the German problems. The list starts going on. And if we get a problem in their bond market, well, people, aren't going to wait and see if it's a problem in ours. No, they're going to bail out. Am I right to assume, though, that that's the kind of thing that could send interest rates skyrocketing simply because people will sell their debt before it hits or while it's hitting, and of course then interest rates will go up?
Yeah, I mean, you have two factors that are behind higher interest rates. One is war.
Yeah.
And then the second one, the mere fact that the UK and France are even hinting about an IMF bailout means they can't sell the debt.
Yeah.
Now, I've done countless studies trying to how those things, how the governments fall. And when you get into these Ponzi schemes, that you're selling new debt and you have to sell the new debt to pay off the old.
Yep.
The default comes when you can't sell the new debt. I mean, you got all these guys running around, oh my God, the debt's at 34 trillion or whatever. That's not the issue. As long as there's a line to buy the new debt, it could be 100 trillion. All right. It's when that line stops. All right. And it's the same thing with interest rates, and stock markets and stuff. I mean, these are all, market myths. I mean, we've done studies. The stock market has never peaked with the same level of interest rates twice. Mm-hmm. Why? Because if you think the stock market's going to double in a year, you'll pay 20%. But if it's not going to go up 1%, you're not going to pay 1%. So it's not the empirical level of interest rates, nor is it the empirical level of the debt. It's when that confidence shifts. And that's the danger we have going on in Europe.
Let me add to that by talking about, again, your modeling was very accurate, as I said at the outset, in predicting an increase in the escalation of tensions of war and then actual war, etc. it seems to me that escalation that your model's been predicting is coming to fruition. There's blatant examples of it. I mean, whether it's Van der Leeuwen talking about, nuclear is possible, or, Macron talking about nuclear deterrent, those kind of things. But the other thing related to interest rates is, I know you've pointed out, you can't lower interest rates in time of war. Well, that seems to be like a double whammy. They can't afford the interest rates because they got so much sovereign debt, but they won't be able to lower them. And this is such a key point in why you focus on war, because the implications financially are so extensive. But I'll just get to this one implication about interest rates, and I'll move on to some currency stuff. But there's not any evidence that you can lower interest rates in time of war, but they can't afford higher interest rates.
Interest rates always go up in war, always. Mm-hmm. And because the debt expands dramatically. And you have these European leaders who are, on the one hand, they need a diversion. All right, so this is why they keep harping on, Putin and Russia. All right, it's, they need that because otherwise people are going to start looking closely at them. And then the problem becomes that in Europe is that they have a choice. When you have, France in trouble, all right, Germany is not in good shape, all right, and so then what happens? All right, you have this situation where if they don't have war with Russia, then the people are only going to focus on them. Is my pension safe? etc. And then you're looking at people storming the parliaments with pitchforks. So they need an external, patsy, so to speak. When Biden put on the sanctions on Russia and gasoline prices went up, what did he say? Yep. Oh, it's Putin's inflation, not his.
Yeah. Well, we just went through the same thing here in Canada, with Trump became, the evil enemy. And we went through a full election where that was the dominant issue. Mm-hmm. And none of the other economic issues were prominent at all, or certainly didn't resonate with people. But certainly, Donald Trump saying Canada would be the 51st state, etc. Exactly what you're saying, though. That detracted from every other issue that was going on in the country. So it shouldn't be a stretch for anyone to see that used as a strategy. But let me come back to, again, the sovereign debt problems that they've got in Europe. And the point being, you can't lower interest rates. They don't lower during war. So again, it just seems like a bit of a rock and a hard place. But is that where that digital currency comes in that they're talking about?
Yeah, the EU is trying to get it up by October. I question whether or not they're going to be able to do it that fast. But all my sources are pretty damn reliable. And what they're planning on doing is going to a CBDC. And then they will cancel all the paper currency. Europe does this routinely. Even Britain,
yes, sir.
They do it. Canada canceled all its high denomination currency. And so if they cancel all the currency, it forces you into the electronic CBDC. Mm-hmm. Then it's absolute, capital controls. This is why our major institutional clients in Europe, I warned them, you better get your gold the hell out of Europe. And that's why I started moving to New York, and they're smart. And so when that first bullet goes, you're not going to be able to move anything. All right, just look at World War I. They shut down all the stock markets. Okay, so it's not of my opinion. We just have to look at history here.
Yeah, but that comes to something else, and we talk about relative currency strengths. If there is further escalation of the war, before that, you're going to see, and maybe we are seeing it, but, capital moving into the States, because that's still the number one choice of a destination if capital has to go. So if we get further to that, to me, that could be a big spur for the stock market. It could be a spur, for the bond market, be a counterbalance there. But the bottom line is war forces capital to move, and you better figure out where.
Yeah, now this is, here in the States, they still call it the everything bubble. You got rare coins going up, stamps, antique cars, real estate, stock market. I'm here in Florida. I still get 3 calls a week, at least. You want to sell your house.
Wow.
No thanks. Where am I going to go? Chicago or something, and even the real estate agents I know down here, they say anything, even now up to $10 million in real estate. People are paying cash.
Wow.
So it's obviously people just trying to get money off the grid.
Yeah.
And a lot of it still is coming in from Europe, from what I hear. South America was really big. It's starting to take second place, but people aren't stupid, and they realize Europe is just not trustworthy. I mean, Spain just did. You can't take out more than 3,000 euros out of your account without government permission.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine that?
Yeah. Well, we see that, and I think that's what people should expect. As they say, that's the relationship where people say, well, why should I care about war going on in Europe? Or, not a lot, but some people might say that. But this is a great example of the ripple effect throughout the world, the contagion, as you alluded to. So I want to move on to the Middle East for a second, because I want to get your take. We had a continued escalation there, as your model projected. And just give me a quick rundown. I mean, the rocket attack in Qatar, that seems to have solidified opposition to the U.S. and Israel, for example.
Yeah, look, Netanyahu went to school in Philadelphia. A lot of people don't know that. I grew up in that area, all right? Mm-hmm. I knew Bill Kristol. Bill Kristol's father taught at Penn. He was the founder of the neocons. And Netanyahu was hanging out with that family gatherings, etc. He is a diehard neocon. And his attack on Qatar basically has led to, it was a stupid decision, in my opinion. Look, there is, you can look it up, it's called Rally Around the Flag. And this is why they use false flags, etc. If you say, come on, everybody join in, volunteer, we're going to go invade Russia because Putin's a bad guy. They're not going to just sign up. You need to be attacked. U.S., it would not get into World War II until Pearl Harbor. All right? So that's what happens. So Netanyahu, by going into Qatar, was the stupidest decision I think possible. Because now you're seeing that all of a sudden, all the Arabs got together in a unified meeting. We have offices there in UAE, and I can tell you that, Egyptians that are there, their passports are not being renewed. And Egypt's calling them back. Everybody's going to sign up for war. This is not, I think Netanyahu has made a serious mistake. And if you pick up the rug a little bit, you'll see the U.S. is trying to take back an air base in Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. Why? Because Saudi Arabia, according to my sources, have informed the U.S., and I don't think this is in the news, but maybe it is yet, I don't know, has informed the U.S. they cannot use their air bases in Saudi Arabia to defend Israel. So all of a sudden, they want to resurrect an air base in Afghanistan. I mean, this is not, this is a religious war. And then you have some, Jews that believe that this is the end times and to bring about the Messiah. You have evangelicals over there, Christians deliberately doing the same thing. And then the Arabs, they call it the Great War. So all three religions believe in this like Armageddon type thing. Question I have is it legitimate if you're all trying to deliberately create it? I don't know.
Well, let me ask
hard
you,
to say.
You look at all of these things, and your modeling has been looking at all of these things for a number of years, for decades. You're coming to some very important dates here. In 2020, 25 was obviously important, but 26, 27, 28, right through to 32. What is about the cycle of war? What about the modeling specifically with, you do modeling for such a huge variety, but I'm on just the war stuff. Are we looking to, the escalation is reflected in the models is there sort of a really bad panic cycle coming up in the modeling?
Well, 2026 is like a panic cycle even in the euro for the whole year. It appears as though we're going to start escalating, from the end of September, particularly into November. But what I should point out is that what the computer is showing is that this is, when it's saying World War III for 26, this is not just Europe versus Russia. Middle East, but over in Asia, you've got, Thailand, Cambodia, India versus Pakistan. You got Brazil, which may go into a revolution after what they're stupidly doing to Bolsonaro. Romania is trying to do the same thing against Kalan. I mean, it's the left is using this legal pretense to try and lock up anybody that opposes them. You saw France doing it to Marine Le Pen. You had Germany trying to outlaw the AfD. You can't, and then they want to stand up and pretend this is democracy. Yeah, right, okay. They did it here in the United States going after Trump. When you cross that line and the rule of law no longer is the cornerstone of your civilization, everything else falls. Without the rule of law, nothing can survive. Nothing.
Well, let me come back to what we were saying about Europe, etc. And and again, the escalation of hostilities there produced something, because I want to talk about gold here in a moment. But what it produced was confiscation of Russian assets, which it seems to me Europe's only too happy to have. The confiscation, they don't have the money to return them anyways, I don't think. But they confiscated Russian assets. We had a very small version here in Canada with confiscation of people who, in quotes, the government said supported the truckers' convoy, but it was still the freezing of assets. That seems to me, and I've watched central banks, especially in China, but other central banks purchasing gold. That seems to be, again, related to all of that. The move in gold was central bank purchasing.
Yeah, well, you have to understand with that, they're not looking at it from a investor standpoint.
Right.
Okay? This is geopolitical. Once the Biden administration removed Russia from the SWIFT system, that set up a flare to everybody else. Hey, you either do what we say or we'll do the same to you. And Blinken even threatened China. And they said, oh, really? Okay, they're just complete neocon idiots, really. And that's what created the BRICS. So it's not this nonsense, oh, the dollar's not backed and all this other kind of, that's all just, propaganda. China started dumping U.S. debt in $50 billion clips, actually, and moving to gold. They don't care if gold goes up. It goes down. It doesn't matter. What the real issue is, you do not hold the debt of an adversary. You go into war with China, and they're going to default on that debt.
Yep.
All right? So that's the real issue here. The main thing with gold is that it is neutral. I've been, informed all our big institutional clients in Europe, and they have followed suit. They listen, they moving their gold the hell out of Europe. Why? Because when that first bullet flies, Europe will put in capital controls. That's unquestionable. That's what the whole CBDC is about. I think they might be able to do that by January and just cancel the currency, and that's it. And then Europeans are going to have to be really, really careful. You better have some money outside the country before that. What you're going to see is eventually gold's going to go up probably to 5,000 to 6,000 by the time you're looking at 2030 period. But that's not, when you say that, you have to understand, that's not saying it's going to go up and everything else is still the same price today, It's also a reflection of the currency, the decline in the currency and things of this nature. When you get into war, and we're looking at really a global war at this stage, not just one group against another, but a whole bunch of groups against everybody there.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, who's going to survive? What's going to be the monetary system? You have the leftists here, like even going after Bolsonaro, etc. There is an agenda, and that agenda is to. They are all pro-war, and what they are looking at is they think they get to redesign everything after war, like Bretton Woods, UN, IMF, all that came up. And they'll be able to install Marxism institutionalized. We were they say that, we had the Civil War against slavery. Fine, we just now are the slaves of the government. That's it. And that's unfortunately the way they view us. I've dealt with governments for so long, and I've actually heard the thing that their view is that whatever we earn is theirs, and they decide how much we're allowed to keep.
Yeah. Let me finish a little bit further with gold here, because I don't want time to run out. So when you're looking at when Socrates is looking at the charts and looking at the market, you're not worried about a major correction. I mean, come on, we've gone up 40% this year in U.S. dollar terms, more in other currency terms, but your charts or your Socrates model is not showing something huge coming our way in terms of a correction.
No, there's always short-term corrections.
Right.
But we're not looking at like a major crash and a decline for 10 years or something like that. Yeah. At the end of the day, we're still in a very long-term bull market. And that is mainly because we're in a long-term bear market with governments. Whatever they can screw up, they have done.
Yep.
There in Canada, Carney wants to look more like Europe, and NATO's out there beating the drums, and they have basically telling all the world leaders that they can defeat Russia some of them have even said in just 3 days, which is nuts. But what they're telling everybody is that if NATO calls up everybody, including Canada, all right, they'll have 3.4 million soldiers against Russia's 1.5. Mm-hmm. So we can take them. Of course, that assumes no nuclear war. Yeah. But so just be careful. Carney is part of that agenda, and NATO goes into that and puts in all sorts of drafts and things, which they are talking about now in Europe. We had staff in Germany that said even somebody who was 60 years old was told to report for duty. It's, he will do the same there in Canada too.
Well, let me say this. I mean, obviously, we've been able to touch on these subjects, and I thank you for it. But the thing I also want to tell people is this is why, thousands and thousands of people tune into the World Outlook Conference, World Economic Conference, that, of course, takes place November 21st, 22nd, 23rd. I invite people, I've done it so many times myself, a great enjoyment to meet people from throughout the world, I might say. Obviously get a chance to chat with Marty at the conference. And I would really encourage people to go to armstrongeconomics.com, armstrongeconomics.com. The blog is free, by the way. And I still say, Marty, just so you know, I know you don't concern yourself with this too much, but to sign on to be a member of Socrates, got to be the best deal going still. I mean, it's tremendous insights and so inexpensive. But I wanted to talk about the November 21st, 22nd, 23rd, where you get a chance to go through everything we've said, but with the charts, with the purchase points or sell points for such a huge variety of things. You can also go virtually if you can't make the travel. You'll get details on how you can do it virtually there too. But as I say, there's tens of thousands of people have taken advantage of this. And as I say, we've just given a little sample of the dynamic world we're living in and the ability of the Socrates model and Martin Armstrong to give you clarity on it. Marty, thank you for taking the time today. Look forward to Orlando.